Hello and welcome back to the channel of nonsense. I'm in one of my favourite places in the whole world, and no, it's not an all-you-can-eat Chinese buffet. It is sunny Bavaria, in particular Berchtesgaden, a lovely little town in the south of Bavaria where no one from history has ever lived, certainly not from the past 100 years. But anyway, we're here to talk about this, the new BMW i4. This is the fast one. It's BMW's all-electric driver's car. It's designed to be fun to drive. This is a 64,000 top spec M50 model, so it's dual motors, it's about 540 odd horsepower, and it's quick. I'm going to take you for a slightly soggy walk-around review. I've already driven it in the dry, and I'll stick that in a minute. Let's get going. Right, I'm afraid the walk around is going to be done on my GoPro rather than my fancy camera because I don't want it getting wet. But anyway, there are going to be two versions of the i4. The base one, which is rear wheel drive with 335 horsepower, and that's going to cost 52 grand in the UK. And that'll do 367 miles on a charge, which is pretty good. This one though will only do 316, but this will do 0 to 62 in 3.9 seconds. The rear wheel drive one is 5.7, and I reckon there's going to be some cheaper, slower ones down the line. Anyway, both versions get an 80 kilowatt hour usable battery, and both can charge on 200 kilowatt chargers, so 10 to 80% will take 31 minutes on a fast charger. Now, I'm all right with the looks of it. I've kind of got used to the looks of the new M4 and M3, and this has got the big grille with active flaps down there, which you probably can't see, for kind of cooling the electrics, the battery and the motors and the brakes and bits and bobs. I think it looks quite modern. This is a matte colour, it's an Interlagos blue, really quite nice, quite like it. You've got big brakes, you can actually fit bigger brakes from the M Performance parts catalogue, well, not bigger, but drilled and vented if you want. The M50 gets adaptive dampers so you can soften it off and stiffen it up. And it's got rear air suspension. Even the cheap one, I think, has rear air suspension. Round the back, you also get no exhaust pipes, but you do get a diffuser. And the boot is quite a decent size. I don't actually know the literage. I will stick it up there. There's my slightly sad looking gimbal that I can't use. That's a good test of seeing if any water gets in the boot. And it doesn't. It just runs onto my shoes. So yeah, it's quite big. It's quite practical. And I'm going to hop in the back. Excuse me being very wet. The back seats are quite roomy looking, but you've got these diddy little headrests here which look a little bit silly. Now, I'm going to hop in. I'm 6'3". I've got a coat on, and the radio's come on for some reason. I don't know why, but anyway, excuse the German man talking in the background. I've got knee room, and I've got headroom. Just, if I lean all the way back, I do hit my head up there a little bit. What else have I got back here? I've got two USB-Cs, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that, and climate controls as well. Isofix on the outer two seats with little flaps to hide them. And the M50 that I'm in has got the Harman Kardon sound system, which is actually really, really good. Now, the big deal about this car is it's got BMW's new iDrive system, which I'm going to show you now, and it's flipping good. Now, up front, you get two screens. You get a 12.3-inch driver's display, and you get a mega 14.9-inch infotainment one that uses BMW's new iDrive Gen 5 using operating system 8. I got that wrong in a video before, and all the BMW fanboys basically crucified me. So yeah, it tells me the weather. It says it's raining. I can definitely attest to that. But the big thing is just how lovely it is to use. So you've got all sorts of natural language voice commands on here and all that kind of stuff, personal assistance. I've got a thing here because it's a media launch with all the routes on there. Obviously you wouldn't have that. But what I really like is how much stuff you can tweak. So he says, I'm still working my way around it slightly. If you go to this menu here, which isn't the prettiest, oh yeah, and you do still have an iDrive controller, you can go to driving settings and look at all the stuff you can fiddle with. So on driver assistance, safety and warnings, you can change how quickly the lane change kind of warns you that you're going out of the road and that kind of stuff. The good ones though are in driving, because this is basically almost a level 3 autonomous car. It's going to be updated to be that. You can adjust how much of a speed limit piss take the driving assistant is. So when you're using the automated driving, you say, actually, I want to break the speed limit a little bit, and it'll let you do it. And you can do all sorts of things, and it'll warn you when you're exceeding the speed limit. Situational distance control, so when you're in town on motorways, it keeps different distances from the car. You can tell it not to undertake people, or you can untick that box and undertake at will, which is brilliant. The assisted driving stuff is quite interesting as well. It's got emergency corridor assistant, which, I don't know if you're familiar, but in Germany, when you get stuck in a traffic jam on a motorway, everyone goes to the outside. It's very sensible to make a corridor for emergency vehicles, and this can do it automatically if it's driving itself. It's all very clever. Now, there's some other stuff on here that I should probably show if I go back to the menu to talk about the noise of the car, and I will talk about this in the driving bit of this. But if we go to drivetrain and chassis, you can turn the fake engine noise on and off, and it is quite an interesting sound. I'll try and get some of that in the driving bit. And you can change how much recuperation you get when you lift off the brake. So adaptive, again, I'll talk about this in driving, basically means that it will vary how much regenerative braking you get when you're in different situations, towns, countries, going between speed limit changes. It can read traffic lights. It can do everything. It's really, really impressive. It's by far the most advanced system I've used in a car ever. BMW always were king of the infotainment systems. They've fallen behind a little bit, but I think they're very much back at the top. My CarPlay is not working because my phone is buggered. That's nothing to do with the car, but it takes the full screen if you use that, and it's wireless Apple CarPlay. You've also got wireless charging. You've got a normal USB. You've got a USB-C. You've got a cubby hole. You've got all your usual Sport, Comfort, Eco, Pro buttons, and you can customize Sport and Sport Boost, which we'll talk about in the driving, because you actually get two different power outputs depending on what mode you're in. Cameras, parking stuff. Yeah, lots of things. Self-driving button is there, cruise control. This little button here is a new one on me, so you can change what is shown in the screen, which is all very exciting, but you can also change what the head-up display looks like. And it's a really cool advanced head-up display with animations that you're not going to be able to see, so I won't talk about it too much, but it is a really pretty head-up display. Again, the best I've ever used. It is a really impressive car, packed with technology. But the whole point of this car is it's going to be an electric car that's fun to drive, so I'm going to cut to me driving earlier when it wasn't raining elephant urine outside from a giant schlong in the sky. So yeah, let's cut to driving. Right, let's go for a drive in the BMW i4 M50. It's easy for me to remember that because it's telling me on the screen. Foot on the brake, a little blue start-stop button, and it whirs into life. Now, first things first that we should talk about, the driving position in this car. Put it in gear. The driving position is very good. In true BMW style, you can get the seat really low, the wheel nice and far out, and it feels pretty much like the M4, except without those silly carbon testicle tray bucket seats. And it's very familiar straight away, and it feels like a connected car. Some EVs feel a bit aloof, but from the minute you start driving this, it feels right. You kind of sense what it's doing through your bum. The steering is not exactly alive with feel, but it's direct and quite fast, the rack as well. So on a twisty road, I've had quite a lot of fun already. Now, I'll talk about motorway bits in a minute, but BMW says this is the most fun to drive electric car they've made so far, which kind of makes sense. Obviously, we had the i8, but that's quite old now. And this, it grips and goes pretty well. I would say that, but it's very wet. Did get a little bit of understeer around that corner, and that is the thing. BMW's done a pretty good job of masking the weight of this car. I can't remember the actual weight, but it's reasonably heavy because it's electric. I'll stick the figure in up there somewhere. But in the wet, it does understeer a bit, but you kind of want that. You don't want it to just do oversteer. However, when you get on the power in sport mode, you don't have to press dynamic traction control. It will step out ever so slightly on the power. So it does feel like an exciting BMW when you come out of a roundabout and it's like, ooh, you can feel the back axle working, and then you get all nerdy like that. So yeah, it is fun to drive up to a point, but it is a little bit understeery. Don't think BMW has managed to fight physics and defeat them. Now, in terms of general comfort, I've done a lot of driving around town through all these Bavarian villages, and it's really comfy. It's got adaptive dampers, it's got air suspension on the rear axle, and you stick it in comfort mode, and it is really quite good. It's quite blissful. It's almost kind of like, almost like an S-Class from 5-6 years ago. It's really cosseting. Now, in the past couple of years, BMW's made a big deal about the fact that Hans Zimmer, the composer of film scores such as Shark Tale, Madagascar 2, and he probably did some other bigger, more adult films, but those are the important ones. He's orchestrated the electric car noise for BMW. It is interesting. It does different things at different speeds, and it's quite textured and quite interesting. I think I've said interesting twice there, but it's quite loud. In sport mode, it's like,
please leave the roundabout at the second exit.
It's pretty in your ears, in your face, in your ears. It's quite noisy, but you can turn it off, but you have to go through a few menus. And it's called iconic sounds, and you'll want to turn it off after a while, because even in comfort mode, it gets quieter, but it's still there, and it's just a little bit annoying. So you can get rid of it. But that's the great thing about this new infotainment system, iDrive operating system 8 Gen 5 iDrive, there's too many numbers. You can customize pretty much everything. Right, so to drive dynamically, it's interesting, it's entertaining, it does little sidewaysiness from the back, but it does still feel a bit heavy and a bit understeery, especially in the wet, and it kind of goes understeery, oversteery, and then the stability control has a bit of a shit fit and sorts you out, but you never feel in danger. It's just, there's a lot of torque, and it's really easy to overwhelm the tyres in the wet. And that might not be the most reassuring feeling, especially if you're not a helmsmith. But anyway, enough of that. I'm going to cut to me earlier on an Autobahn going fast, and I'll talk to you about how loud it is on the motorway. Now, I'm on an Autobahn motorway, and I have no speed limit, so let's see how fast we can go and see if the i4 stays refined and comfortable.
In 1 kilometre, take exit 8 on right and then turn left.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of road noise and a bit of tyre noise, but that's 240 kilometers an hour, which is quite fast. Now I've got to brake because I've got to come off the Autobahn.
Right and then turn left.
But yes, very short blast of high-speed Autobahn, and it felt stable, it felt composed, it felt like a proper BMW. Now I've got a classic German slip road here,
left at the end of the
which
road.
is tight and curvy and fun. And even in comfort mode, the body control is really, really good. Like, not even just for an electric car, for any car. The way that railed round there was really impressive. I'm not even in sport mode yet. So yes, comfortable cruiser, definitely. And the first hint of something that's quite special from an electric car in corners too. Now, 0 to 62 in this M50 version of the i4 is 3.9 seconds. So I'm in sport mode, sport boost mode to get the full whack. There we go, launch control active. And oh my God, yeah, that's 100. That was a bit slower than it should be because it's very wet, and it kind of does kick sideways slightly as you're going. Oh, I really don't know how much grip I've got from this front axle. Yeah, that's a bit of understeer. Yeah, it does really not hide its weight terribly well. But yes, it is quick off the line, and it is violently fast. Now, it's probably going to be a faster version at some point, I imagine, but 3.9 to 60 is fast enough for me, thank you very much. Anyway, that's probably enough about driving the BMW i4 M50. Back to you, Tim, for an outro. So in conclusion, what do I think of the BMW i4 M50? Well, £64,000, it just isn't cheap. It's quite expensive, but the level of performance is amazing. It will beat an M3 off the line, and then it will not win because obviously electric cars do slow down a bit. But really, the driving for an electric car is pretty good. Now, you do have to manage the weight and the grip in the wet, as I've said, so it's not perfect. BMW haven't managed to work miracles, but I'd say it's the best driving EV that I've driven, if that makes sense. The driving position is amazing, the infotainment is amazing, it's next level, it's futuristic, that infotainment system. All the stuff on here is pretty crazy, all the driver assist stuff, so it's going to be very exciting to see what BMW does next, frankly. So yeah, very good car. Anyway, thank you ever so much for watching. Sorry it's been wet and a bit miserable. Give me a pity like and comment and subscribe, and I will see you next time when you finish that pornography you're watching, and when I'm not next to a German leader's house. And I'm not talking about Angela Merkel.